I cradled the bag of lemon rolls close to my chest. They were still warm, soft against the inside of my coat, like a heartbeat I could borrow for just a moment longer. The air was light, filled with the sweetness of sugar and citrus, the kind that follows you home from church like a good memory. I smiled to myself, even hummed a little. The birds were chirping, and someone nearby had just started mowing their lawn. Life felt normal. I reached into my purse, pulled out my keys, and stepped up to the door. I didn't even pause. My fingers found the familiar shape without looking. The motion was second nature. I was already thinking about whether to heat the rolls now or save them for later. But the key wouldn't turn. I tried again, slower, still nothing. I blinked, staring at the handle, and gave it another gentle twist. Nothing. The warmth from the bag in my arms suddenly felt too hot. Something wasn't right. The key dug into the side of my thumb, cold and stiff. I tried turning it again. My wrist twisted, slow and careful, then faster. A little nudge, like always. It should have clicked. It always clicked, but it didn't. The lock held tight, unmoved, like it didn't recognize me. I leaned in closer, lips pressed together. "Come on," I whispered under my breath, like the door and I were in on something together. Like we still had trust, but it didn't budge. The wind shifted, lifting the corner of my scarf and brushing my cheek like a question I wasn't ready to answer. I pulled the key out and tried again. The teeth slid in fine, but the turn, it wasn't. Stuck. It was wrong. My breath caught, not from the effort, from something lower, something in my chest, the space just below my heart. It wasn't the lock that had changed. It was something else, and I felt it slipping. I stepped back to try again. That's when I saw the blinds move, just the smallest shift. My heart skipped. I knew that flicker, my grandson. His eyes met mine. He was standing there. Inside, he saw me. And then, he disappeared. Just like that. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He didn't come. He just turned away. I froze. The porch suddenly felt too big beneath my feet. My hand hung in the air, still reaching for something that wasn't reaching back. I didn't cry, but something inside me broke so quietly. Think even the birds stopped to hear it. The lavender from next door drifted through the air, soft and familiar. I'd always loved that smell. Years ago, I planted a bush of my own, just under the kitchen window. But now, it felt like even the flowers had chosen sides. I kept my hand on the doorknob. It had long since stopped turning, but I hadn't let go. The silence behind the door wasn't empty. It was heavy. It was full of answers I didn't want. I thought if I just stood there long enough, something might change. But it didn't. And I think that hurt more than anything else. The wind picked up gently, brushing my coat hem as if it were nudging me, trying to say something. I didn't move. Leaves tumbled across the steps. A few birds flitted past like nothing had happened, and maybe to the world, nothing had. I stood still, arms wrapped around the bag of rolls that had begun to cool. The scent wasn't as strong anymore. It didn't matter. I felt like a misplaced detail in someone else's photograph. A shadow not meant to be in the frame. Still, I waited, because maybe someone would open the door. Maybe. This door had known me once. I painted it myself, twice. First time with Harold laughing when we picked the wrong shade of brown. Second time, alone after he passed. Steady hand, quiet heart. I'd polished the brass knob until it gleamed like sunlight. I'd hung wreaths for Christmas, taped up paper hearts for Valentine's. I'd watched children run through it barefoot, chasing each other through summer. Now it stood still, closed. My fingers trembled as I touched the edge, not from age, but from something that didn't have a name yet. Maybe this door knew me still, and still chose not to open. Harold's boots echoed through the empty frame of what would soon be our living room. It was still all beams and dust, no walls yet. But he walked through it like it was already home. Every step he took left prints in the sawdust, and he whistled, off-key but full of joy. That sound filled the whole space, bouncing off wood and sunlight and promises we hadn't spoken out loud yet. "I'm thinking the couch should go right here," he said, pointing with the hammer in his hand. I laughed. "And what if I think it should go over there?" "Then it'll go over there," he smiled, "and I'll build a new wall around it." I leaned against the window frame, sunlight spilling in warm and golden, dust dancing in the beams like confetti. The air smelled, like fresh lumber and sweat and something sweeter. Hope, maybe. That's the only word I have for it now. Hope with a heartbeat. Harold hammered in another nail, each strike steady, certain. "Every board I place," he said, "I'm placing for us, for what we're building, not just where we're living." I remember thinking I'd never heard anything more romantic than that. We didn't just build a house, we built a life. One laugh, one beam, one paint-stained shirt at a time. Even before the front door had a key, it had meaning. It was already home. And in that moment, standing in that dusty light, I could already hear the echoes of birthdays, dinners, lullabies, and arguments. Everything a real home should hold. Harold planted the lilac bush right outside the kitchen window. Said it was my early birthday gift, but we both knew he never waited well. "You'll smell it every morning when you make your tea," he told me, patting the soil like it was sacred. And I did. Every spring, right on time, those blooms came in thick and proud. The scent would sneak through the screen, mingling with the steam from the kettle and the scent of worn wood and lemon polish. I'd close my eyes and breathe it in, sweet, soft, purple. It smelled like being loved. The window pane was always a little streaked, but I never minded. I liked the way the light bent through it. I'd stand there with my hands around a mug, warming my fingers, feeling the hum of the house around me. Some mornings Harold would whistle from the porch swing. Other times we didn't speak at all. We didn't need to. That scent, though, that lilac, it stayed with me, still does. Some days when I'm feeling far from myself, I go outside and search for that smell in the air. And when I catch it, even faint, I remember I was once planted into someone's life with care. I was watered. I was known. The front hallway used to be a battlefield of muddy shoes, soccer cleats, boots from the creek, bare feet caked with garden soil. They came in and left trails like maps of joy, and I never once scolded them for it. I'd sigh and reach for the mop, baby on my hip, one hand steadying the bucket. "Lord help me," I'd mutter, grinning. And the boys would laugh, still carrying that boyish energy straight into the kitchen for snacks. The house smelled like damp grass and peanut butter. Lyle once tripped and left a perfect print on the wall. I never painted over it. Those prints, those smudges, those little disasters, they meant something. They were proof my family lived here, moved here, grew here. I remember one day I looked down and realized I hadn't had to mop in days. No shoes, no mess, no giggles, just clean the floors, and I hated it. I would trade every spotless tile for one more trail of muddy footprints leading to the kitchen. Just one more slam of the door, followed by, "Mom, I'm starving." I didn't mind the mess. It meant they still needed me. It was summer, one of those slow, sticky afternoons when everything outside hummed. Lyle ran in from the backyard, cheeks flushed and holding a crooked stick like it was gold. "Here," he said breathlessly, placing it in my hand. "It's your scepter. You're the queen now." "Well then," I said, holding it high, "guess I better rule the kitchen." He grinned so wide I thought his face might stay that way. I wore that imaginary crown all evening, while seasoning the chicken, while stirring the pot, even while setting the table. "Queen's dinner is ready," I announced, and he bowed, dramatically, before giggling and racing to wash his hands. Funny how a child can crown you with more truth than any adult ever could. In his eyes, I wasn't just Mom. I was something bigger. Something magical. And for that day, I was. Saturdays had a rhythm. I'd open every window just a crack, let the breeze slide through the rooms. Dust danced in the light, and I'd begin, polishing, straightening, humming. The smell of lemon polish filled the house, not harsh, just clean, familiar, like finishing something and knowing it's done right. I'd hum old hymns as I moved, cloth in hand, sometimes singing softly, sometimes letting the tune carry me. And out on the porch, Harold would sit in the swing, tapping his foot to the beat. "Sounds like a church in here," he'd say with a chuckle. "Better," I'd call back. "Nobody's off key." He'd laugh that low, chest-deep laugh I loved. Sometimes I'd glance out and catch him mouthing the words with me. We were always in a quiet harmony, never showy, just steady. The scent of lemon and song still lives in the wood of that house. Even now, when I catch a trace of either, I feel him there. In the shine of the banister, in the creak of the floor. In peace we polished together. We never said it in grand ways. No billboards of affection, no flowers ordered online. Our forever lived in the small things. On the way, Harold waited in the car with it running on cold mornings. In the second spoon in the sugar bowl because he knew I'd always forget mine. One night we sat on the porch, warm mugs of chamomile in hand. The porch light flickered on above us, casting soft halos on our laps. He looked out into the dark and said, quiet as a whisper, "This is our forever." I didn't say anything. I just reached for his hand. That was enough. Sometimes I think about that moment. How small it was, how big it became. I believed him then, and honestly, I think I still do. Some nights, when the house is too quiet, I sit at the edge of my bed and ask it, softly, if it remembers. The floorboards creak in the same places they always did. The windows still hum when the wind pushes just right. The closet door still sticks a little at the bottom. It remembers, but sometimes I wonder, will I ever feel that kind of love again? The kind that doesn't need reminding or explaining or proving. The kind that shows up with a warm mug or a folded towel without being asked. Maybe that kind of love was only meant for the younger me. The woman with energy, with the apron tied tight, with hands that never stopped moving. But I want to believe it isn't gone. Just waiting. Somewhere quiet. Maybe, like the house, it's listening too. Hoping I still believe. I sat on the edge of the bed, light barely slipping through the gap in the curtains. The air smelled like cedar and something older, like the corners of a life well lived. His jacket was draped over the armchair, the one with the worn elbow and the buttons missing from the cuff. I reached for it like muscle memory, pulled it into my lap, ran my hand over the flannel he wore nearly every fall Sunday. I don't know why I slipped my fingers into the pocket. Habit, maybe, or hope. I expected lint, maybe a forgotten gum wrapper, but I found a note, a folded scrap of paper, creased in the middle. My name is written across the front. Inside, in Harold's shaky, fading script, "You are my home." I didn't breathe. I just stared. My heart made this strange sound, part ache, part whisper. I clutched the jacket to my chest, pressing the note into my palm like it could melt into me. It was him. It was still him. Reaching through time, through silence, and somehow that note, that soft, unfinished goodbye, said more than the funeral ever did. The envelope came between a coupon flyer and a charity appeal. Nothing special about it. Just white. Thick. My Name printed neatly on the front. I stood at the kitchen counter, coffee cold beside me. I opened it without thinking. It wasn't a card. It wasn't a letter. It was paperwork. Power of attorney. I stared at it. Read it twice. Then a third time. My son's name. Already signed at the bottom. No conversation. No heads up. Just a decision. Mailed like a formality. The refrigerator hummed. The sunlight poured in too bright across the table. I couldn't move. Fingers tightened around the page, not in anger, just to feel something. I read the words again, but they swam this time. Not from age, from disbelief. I had loved them with every ounce of who I was, hold them, fought for them, and now they were arranging how to live without me while I was still here. It was almost midnight. I had come upstairs early but never fell asleep. The old stairs creaked when I shifted, but I stayed quiet, just sitting, still. Voices floated up from the kitchen, low, careful, but not careful enough. She's been forgetting more. I think we need to start looking into options. She's not herself anymore. I sat frozen, hand gripping the railing, not because I was eavesdropping, but because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They thought I was fading, but I remembered everything, the fevers I rocked them through, the heartbreaks I patched with cocoa and prayers, the nights I sat at that very table waiting for them to come home safe. And now I have a checklist, a problem to manage. I listened until the voices went quiet. And then I sat a little longer, heart thudding against a truth I didn't want to meet. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. The candles flickered, casting soft halos on the plates. The roast chicken was perfect. Cassie always cooked it well. She passed the bowl of potatoes across the table. "Can you make sure she takes her meds tonight?" she asked Lyle. He nodded, never looking up. She, not Mom, not even a glance in my direction. I sat there with my fork still, hands folded neatly in my lap, invisible at a table I once filled with stories and birthday candles. They talked around, me like I was an old piece of furniture, still standing, no longer noticed. I wasn't part of the circle anymore, just orbiting it. The rain tapped softly against the window. Dinner had leftovers. A kiss on my forehead, quick and distracted. No card, no cake, nothing on the calendar. I sat at the end of the table, watching them laugh about something on the TV in the other room. It was my birthday, and no one remembered. I didn't say a word. I cleared my plate, wiped the table, moved quietly through the shadows of the hallway. Some griefs come loud. This one came like a whisper under the door. I sat at the kitchen table, watching the toast begin to burn in the toaster. No one noticed. The radio played something soft in the background, an old tune I used to hum. But no one was listening. They'd planned a trip. I found out by accident. Doctor's appointments were rescheduled. Groceries arrived without asking what I needed. "We figured it out," Cassie said casually. "They didn't forget me. They just didn't include me. I wasn't unwanted, just unneeded, like background music in a room where no one's dancing anymore." I opened the drawer slowly and pulled out the form, the one I hadn't signed, not out of anger, out of truth. I folded it carefully, crisp edges lined like linens I used to press for Sunday. Then I walked to the closet, reached for Harold's jacket. I slid the paper into the same pocket where his note still sat. "You are my home." I smoothed the coat back into place. That was my answer. Not to them, but to me. And I believed it. I still do. The room was dim, the blinds pulled tight against the afternoon sun. Dust floated in slow spirals through the air, soft and weightless. I hadn't touched his side of the closet since the funeral. But that day, I reached for it, his jacket, the one with frayed cuffs and a missing button, faded plaid, soft at the collar where his stubble used to rest. I pulled it down gently, holding it like something sacred. The scent hit me first. Old spice, cedar, a whisper of sawdust. And rain, that wet, earthy scent he always brought in with him when he came home from work. I pressed it to my face and let the fabric wrap around me. It still held him. And in that moment, that jacket did something no one else had done in days. It held me back. I sank onto the edge of the bed. The room didn't speak. The world didn't shift. It just paused. Quiet. Still. A space big enough for me to feel the ache without explanation. I closed my eyes and let the weight of the jacket settle over my lap. Some part of me whispered, "He's not coming back," but another part said, "He never really left." It looked like junk mail, a thick white envelope mixed in with catalogs and bills. My name printed clean across the front. I sat at the kitchen table, mail spread out, tea cooling beside me. I opened it slowly, not curious, just routine. And then I saw the words, "Power of Attorney." My son's signature was already at the bottom, like it had always belonged there. There was no letter, no note, no "Hi, Mom," just a form. I stared at it, read it again and again. My fingers curled around the edge of the paper like it might slip away, but it didn't. The refrigerator hummed behind me. A car passed outside. The sunlight through the window hit the form too brightly, like it was trying to burn the truth into me. They'd made decisions, without me. For me, I wasn't being asked. I was being arranged. And for the first time in years, I realized they weren't waiting for me to grow old. They'd already decided I had. I hadn't meant to listen, but I'd left the light off upstairs. And when I sat on the top step, it was easier just to be still, to disappear a little. Their voices came up from the kitchen, floating like steam from a pot. She's been forgetting things. We need to think about next steps. What if she falls? I didn't move, didn't breathe. They thought I was sleeping, fading, something to be handled gently like a crack in old china. But I wasn't forgetting. I remembered everything. The long nights with feverish babies on my chest. The fights I helped them through. The mornings I stood by the window, waiting for them to come home safe. I remembered who I was. They just didn't. I sat in the dark, hands folded tight in my lap, heart beating like a clock too fast. They were planning my absence before I'd even left the room. Cassie was setting the table. Lyle was checking his phone. I sat down like always, in the same seat I'd used since the boys were little. "Can she eat pasta tonight?" Cassie asked, glancing toward Lyle. "I think she skipped lunch," he said, eyes still on his screen. She. Not Mom, not even your mother. She. I looked down at the plate in front of me. Same floral pattern I'd chosen when we moved in. The same forks I'd washed 1,000 times. They talked around me like I wasn't there, like I was a piece of furniture in the house they'd inherited. I used to be the center of every conversation. Now I was just a quiet name without a voice. And, sitting there between candlelight and laughter I wasn't invited to share, I realized I wasn't losing my place. It had already been taken. The kitchen light was soft and low. I cut myself a slice of cake, just one. No candles, no writing, no frosting. I didn't want to wake anyone, so I lit a tea candle instead. Watched it flicker, watched my own face reflected in the window, older, smaller, still. No one had said a word all day, not one mention. I took a bite. It was too sweet. I didn't make a wish. There's a quiet kind of birthday grief, one you don't unwrap, one that just sits beside you, gentle and sad. And that night, it held my hand. I sat in the sunroom with the form in my lap, the one they sent me, the one already signed. It crinkled every time I shifted, loud in the stillness, like it was trying to remind me what it was. Power of attorney. I hadn't signed it. I didn't know if that made me foolish or brave. But I knew one thing. If I signed, I wouldn't be asking for help. I'd be handing myself away. I looked out through the screen. Lilacs were blooming near the fence. The light hit the window just right. Amber, soft, forgiving. I traced the edge of the paper. I wasn't ready to disappear politely. The lamp beside the bed cast a warm pool of light across the blanket. I opened the closet, reached for Harold's jacket. His scent still lived faintly in the collar. I folded the form carefully, lining up the creases just like I used to do with linens on Sundays. Then I slid it into the pocket, right next to the note he'd left me. Once, you are my home. The coat now held both, his love and my refusal. I didn't need a signature to know who I was. I just needed to remember it. And I did. They said it was closer to the bathroom. More comfortable, Cassie smiled, smoothing the sheets like I should be grateful. Lyle nodded beside her, arms crossed like the decision had been made days ago. I stepped into the guest room. 4 walls, no windows. A closet with coats that hadn't been worn since the kids were in high school. The air was cool, but not fresh. Still, it smelled like cedar and linen and things no one cared enough to throw out. Cassie patted the pillow. You'll sleep better down here. I nodded. I didn't argue. I just sat on the edge of the bed while they retreated upstairs, their voices soft, fading. The bulb above hummed faintly. No lamps, no pictures, just furniture that had outlived its use elsewhere. I lay back slowly, letting the silence fold over me. The mattress was firm, untouched. The ceiling is too close. I remembered when I used to tuck them in. Warm light, storybooks, laughter. Now I was tucked away, out of sight, out of schedule. I traced a crack in the wall with my eyes and whispered, when did I stop being part of the upstairs? There was no answer. Just the faint creak of the floor above and the soft hum of a house that no longer made space for me. The sheets were smooth, cold, and stiff beneath my hand, bleached clean, pressed sharp, like they belonged to a guest who wouldn't stay long. I ran my fingers across them, half hoping I'd find something, an old hairpin, a button, a note, something that said someone lived here once. But there was nothing. Just the smell of starch and emptiness. I turned onto my side. The pillow didn't yield. The blanket scratched. Even the silence felt tight around my shoulders. I used to make beds, like this, for visitors, just in case. Now it was mine. I lay still, watching the crack of hallway light under the door. It didn't flicker. No one passed. No voices. No good nights. Just me. Alone in a room meant for no one in particular. I exhaled, slowly, and thought, this isn't comfortable. This is storage. Somewhere above, I heard the faint clang of a cabinet. Dishes being put away. They'd gone on living. I had been placed. The living room was buzzing softly with the sound of the television. A cooking show, I think, or maybe one of those home renovation things. No one was really watching. I sat on the edge of the armchair, hands folded in my lap, waiting for a pause, a glance, an opening. I was thinking, I said gently. Your dad was born on a day like this. Storm rolling in, and the nurse had just... No one looked up. Cassie scrolled on her phone. My granddaughter tapped across a tablet. I closed my mouth, looked down at my hands. I used to be a storyteller. They'd gather around after dinner, heads on pillows, eyes wide. Tell us the one about the frog in the freezer. Now, they barely noticed I was there. The house still knew my voice, but the people inside had forgotten the sound. I sat back slowly, the flickering light from the TV casting. Blurry shadows across the floor. I wanted to say more, but stories need listeners, and I wasn't in the script anymore. It was a crooked little stick, bent at the top like a question mark. He'd found it under the oak tree and ran up to me like it was treasure. Here, Lyle said, breathless. It's your scepter. You're the queen. I laughed. lifted it, above my head like it weighed 100 pounds. "All rise," I said dramatically. "Her Majesty declares dinner ready." He clapped. Actually clapped. I wore that imaginary crown all evening, stirred soup with flair, declared, "More salt." Like a royal decree, Harold laughed from the porch, shaking his head like he'd married a circus act. We were silly. We were sure of each other. Now Lyle passes me in the hallway with a nod at best. No crown, no warmth, just polite efficiency. But I still remember that twig. I remember how it felt to be seen as something magical. I may not wear the crown now, but I'll never forget the day I earned it. I heard it again that morning. Did she eat? Can she come upstairs? She. The word stung more than I wanted to admit. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands resting on my knees, listening to their footsteps move above me like I was something beneath the floorboards. I used to be Mom. My name meant comfort once. Security, familiar warmth. Now it was just a task, an item on someone's list. I pressed my palm to my chest and whispered softly, "Just once, Margaret." Just to remember how it felt in the air. It sounded unfamiliar, but it was mine. I opened the drawer quietly. Inside were old church bulletins, some creased, some stained with coffee rings, others still crisp like they'd just been handed out. I took one out, tracing the date with my finger. Easter, 1989. I remembered that Sunday, the new yellow dress, Lyle squirming in the pew, Harold squeezing my hand during the final hymn. I flipped through the names in the announcements. I knew most of them by heart. Back then, they knew mine too. I used to lead the ladies' prayer circle. I used to be asked to read aloud. Now the songs sounded off, not wrong, just distant, like the hymns had moved on without me. I sat in the dark, knees pulled to my chest, wrapped in a blanket that didn't quite reach my toes. The hallway light leaked under the door, soft and pale. I stared at it, breathing slow, when, "Did I stop being Mama?" I whispered, "and start being her?" It wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 small ones, a thank you that never came, a story interrupted. Dinner passed, a locked door. I used to be the center. Now I was an afterthought. Spare. I pressed my forehead to my knees, letting the quiet answer me back. It didn't. The bag of lemon rolls was warm against my chest, the heat seeping through the thin paper like a secret. I cradled it gently, careful not to crush the softness inside. They were still fresh from the church kitchen, sticky with sugar, bright with citrus. Meant to be shared, meant for family. The hymns were still playing faintly in my mind, the last "Amen" barely faded from my lips. I walked up the path slowly, gravel crunching under my feet. The sky above was a pale gray, not quite threatening rain, but not promising sunshine either. I smiled a little to myself. Thought maybe I'd make coffee to go with them. Thought maybe we'd sit at the table together like we used to. I even imagined Lyle taking the first bite and saying, "These taste like home." I shifted the bag in my arms as I reached the porch. The rolls were still warm, but something in the air felt colder, off. The wind lifted a corner of the bag, and the sugary scent drifted up, sweet and hopeful. But the moment I touched the key in my pocket, something in me stilled. The warmth began to fade, slowly, like it realized it didn't belong here anymore. I slid the key into the lock the way I always had, firm, familiar. My fingers knew the motion by heart. Left turn, slight push, door open. It was one of the last things that still made me feel like myself, but this time it caught on. I paused. Turn it again, slower, kinder, nothing. I leaned in, rested my hand against the doorframe like I was steadying it, or maybe steadying myself. I jiggled the knob gently. Still no give. I pressed my palm flat against the wood, My own front door, the one Harold installed when we first moved in. The one the kids ran through barefoot every summer. It wouldn't move. The porch creaked under my feet as I stepped back, heart thudding with something I didn't have a name for yet. Don't panic, not anger, just something wrong. I stared at the door, at the chipped paint, at the lock that used to welcome me like a handshake. Now it felt like a stranger's hand, cold, impersonal. The screen door 2 houses down slammed. Someone laughed in the distance. But here, nothing moved, not even the doorknob, and I realized it wasn't stuck, it was locked, against me. I stepped back, trying to catch my breath when the blinds shifted, just slightly, barely there. But I saw him, my grandson. His face appeared in the narrow gap, eyes meeting mine for a single, suspended moment. My heart leapt, just for a second, thinking maybe he was coming to open the door. Maybe this was a mistake. But then, he turned. The blinds fell back into place like a curtain closing on a show that had ended too soon. That second lingered longer than any hymn I'd sung that morning. It wasn't just the door that shut. It was a heart. And I stood there, holding a bag of rolls and a hope that was no longer mine to carry. I sat down slowly, the wooden porch step groaning beneath me, louder than it had any right to be. Like the house itself was protesting my presence. I placed the bag of lemon rolls gently on my lap, hands folded over it as if that would keep it from cooling too fast, as if that would keep me from unraveling too fast. The wind blew softly, carrying the smell of someone else's lunch from down the block. Chicken, maybe. Garlic. Something warm. Something wanted. I used to rock babies on this porch, tuck blankets under small chins, brush crumbs from their lips, sing softly while the wind played. In their hair, now I rocked myself. No voices, no door opening, just me, the bag, and the sound of a neighborhood that didn't pause for pain. I looked at the empty swing. I used to be the one who fills that space. Now I wasn't sure I even belonged on the steps. The note was taped right there, eye level, just one piece of paper. I didn't have to open it. It faced outward like a billboard. The words were printed in black marker. Neat, final. We're at capacity. Please understand. No name, no signature, no apology. Please understand. I blinked, once, twice. The corners of the paper flapped in the wind, but it didn't feel alive. It felt mechanical, administrative. I placed my hand against the door, just next to the note. It was dusty. The tape left little wrinkles across the page. I stared at the words until they blurred, not from age, not from poor vision, from the faucet, behind my eyes that had turned on without permission. They didn't need me to understand. They just needed me to go. The tears didn't fall. They leaked, quiet, steady, like a faucet left running in the other room. I didn't wipe them. There was no one to perform for. No one comforted me or asked what was wrong. Just me, sitting there with a bag of lemon rolls that had started to lose their scent. The wind lifted the edge of my collar and sent a shiver down the back of my neck. The world was still moving. Trees swayed. A car passed. Somewhere, a door opened, just not mine, and I sat, leaking into the silence. Not sobbing, not shaking, just dripping slowly into a space that didn't remember I belonged there. I touched the bag gently. It was cold now, like everything else. I don't know how long I sat there. The sky above me changed without permission. Brighter at first, then dimmer, then just soft and gray. The sun moved on. So did the day. I didn't. I watched shadows shift across the walkway. Birds grew quiet. The breeze turned sharp, but no one came. Not a knock. Not a call from the other side of the door. I wasn't sure if I was waiting for someone to let me in, or just waiting to feel like I still existed. But neither happened. The world dimmed around me, and I sat there, still, until the light changed. Again, she opened the door before I could even lift my hand to knock. "Come in, sweetheart," Mrs. Beale said, like she'd been expecting me. No questions, no tilt of the head, no pity in her eyes. The moment I stepped inside, I breathed in the smell of cinnamon and old paperbacks. Her living room was warm, lit by one soft lamp that made everything glow like a memory. A quilt was already folded over the back of the couch. Didn't say a word. Just sat down, still holding the bag of lemon rolls like it meant something. She took one look, nodded gently, and walked into the kitchen. A moment later, she came back with the quilt and tucked it around my knees. Then she sat across from me, tea steeping in the background, and said nothing. And somehow, that silence healed more than any words ever could. The next morning, she handed me a small envelope with a smile. "This got left in mine," she said casually, like it wasn't about to change my entire day. I turned it over in my hands, childish stickers on the flap, heart drawn in red crayon. Inside, a simple note written in wobbly, crooked letters. "I miss your stories." My breath caught, my hands trembled. I stared at those 10 words like they were a lifeline. They came from my youngest grandchild, the one who still remembered. I hadn't disappeared. Not to everyone. I sat at the kitchen table, card in my hand. I read it again. And again. Ran my fingers across the crayon like it might fade if I didn't hold it gently. "I miss your stories," I whispered, just to hear the words in the room. They settled into the silence like they belonged there. Like I did too. It didn't fix everything, but something inside me, something tired, stretched, like a window had opened in a room too quiet for too long. I stood in the kitchen, both hands wrapped around the kettle's handle. No shaking. I picked my favorite mug, the blue one, chipped near the rim, still good, still mine. I poured slowly, no rush, no spill. I stirred with intention. Then I said it, my name, soft, steady. Not for anyone else, just to remind myself I was still here, still whole. That afternoon, I pulled out the papers they thought I'd sign, the ones they'd already filled out in neat, confident type. I read every word, slowly, carefully. Then I slid them aside and began again. Not out of anger. Not for revenge, for clarity. I underlined my own name, bold, centered. Then I circled hers, my granddaughter's, the one who remembered. I picked up the pen, and for the first time in weeks, my hand didn't tremble. The moonlight made everything look softer than it was. I walked along the side path, careful not to let the gravel crunch too loud beneath my shoes. The grass was wet with dew, soaking the edges of my hem, but I didn't rush. I reached the garden gate. My fingers knew where to go before I did. The loose brick, bottom right corner, Harold's idea, back when the kids were small. We called it our secret keeper. I slipped the key out from its hiding place. Cool and dusty, it still fits perfectly in my palm. The gate creaked as I pushed it open. Not loudly, just a quiet sigh, like it remembered me. I didn't sneak in. I returned. Scent of earth and rust filled the night air. The flowers were all asleep, the trees still. This was the place where I once grew tomatoes, sunflowers, and babies, and tonight I stepped through not as a guest, but as someone who had helped build it. The light in the hallway was dim, casting long shadows along the baseboards. I walked slowly, softly. The soles of my shoes barely made a sound. The floor creaked just once beneath my heel. Familiar, like it remembered the weight of me. I moved past the hall closet, past the dusty frame of the mirror where I used to fix my hair before church. The Scent of lemon soap and laundry sheets hung in the air, clean, impersonal. I reached their bedroom door and paused. I heard nothing, just the deep, rhythmic sound of sleep. I didn't linger from bitterness. I wasn't here for confrontation. I was here for the truth, for finality. I looked at the closed door, at the soft light beneath it, and nodded once, to them, to myself. Then I kept walking. No need to knock. No need to be let in. I already knew who I was. It was still there. On the hallway shelf, beneath the lamp I once dusted weekly, the photo of Harold, smiling that half-smile only I could name. The frame was slightly crooked, the way it always was. No one else ever straightened it. I picked it up, wiped my thumb across the glass, and felt the soft catch in my throat. Not grief. Not this time. Gratitude. He once told me, "You were always the strong one." I didn't believe him then. I thought I was just surviving. But tonight, standing in our house with my feet steady, I finally knew what he meant. I smiled. Then I straightened the frame. The kitchen was dark, but not unfamiliar. I pulled out the same chair I always had, the one with the cushion that slid if you didn't sit just right. The legs scraped quietly against the tile. I placed my hands flat on the table. This was where I once poured orange juice into sippy cups, where I patched elbows with Band-Aids and tucked notes into lunch bags. I looked at the seat across from mine. Empty. Not. In a sad way, in a complete way, this wasn't an invasion. It was a memory, a sacred return to the center of the life I built. I sat quietly, breathed it in like steam from an old mug, and for a moment it felt like Sunday morning again, like a place I still belonged to. I pulled a notepad from my purse and placed it in the center of the table. I didn't need many words, just the truth. You changed the locks. I changed my mind. I wrote it neatly, the way I used to write birthday cards, no hesitation, no eraser. Then I signed my name. Full name. Bold. No tears came. Not here, not tonight. The kitchen had seen me cry too many times to count, but tonight it saw something different. Clarity, strength, a woman no longer asking for a seat at her own table. I folded the note gently, left it in plain sight, and stood. I stood near the archway, listening, not to the sound of sleep, but to the memory of what they'd said. She's forgetful. She doesn't need to know. She's just in the way. The words played in my mind like echoes down a hallway I used to own. I didn't respond aloud. I didn't have to. Because tonight, I finally understood. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been overlooked, and that was different. One is accidental. The other is a choice. Let them stay asleep. Let them keep their silence. I had already stepped beyond it. I didn't slam it. I didn't whisper goodbye. I turned the knob, stepped through the door, and let it click shut behind me. Soft. Final. The kind of sound that doesn't echo, but lingers. The lemon rolls were still on the porch, untouched. Their warmth is long gone. I didn't take them with me, let them taste what I once brought with love. The sky had just begun to lighten, a soft blue stretching along the edges of the world. I walked down the steps with steady feet, past the railing. I once painted by hand, and this time I didn't look back, because I no longer needed to. I handed over the deed with a steady hand. It didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a release. The house had served its time with me, held my laughter, my grief, my growing up and growing older. And now, it lives differently. A women's shelter moved in last spring. They painted the shutters a soft blue, added wind chimes that sing when the breeze comes right. I heard they planted herbs in the old garden bed, basil, lavender, thyme. Sometimes I pass by on my morning walks. Birds chirp in bursts, and the porch is never empty. Laughter tumbles down the steps. The walls don't echo anymore. They hum. One afternoon, I stood at the corner, just listening. A little girl in striped socks was drawing on the sidewalk with chalk. Her giggle sounded like music I'd almost forgotten. That house remembers kindness again, and that's enough. Every Sunday, she comes. Braids half done, cheeks a little pink. From the walk, holding her notebook like it holds treasure. We sit in the sunroom, peach tea steaming between us. The sun spills across the rug, warm and unhurried. She asks questions that no one else remembers to ask. About Harold, about the lilacs, about how I met her grandfather. I answer slowly. She listens slower. Sometimes she reads my old recipe cards, out loud. 2 teaspoons of nutmeg, she says, squinting. Nutmeg, I correct, laughing. She grins. Sounds more magical my way? She's right. Every week we stitch something small between us. A memory, a joke, a root. And my Sundays, once silent, now belong to her. The swing still knows me. It groans just right when I sit, like it remembers the rhythm of my weight. The same spot I claimed through winters and weddings, storms and summers. Evenings come. Slow now, a flannel blanket over my knees. The air smells like fresh grass and sun-warmed wood. Leaves rustle above me in a hush I've grown to love. I don't need to speak. I don't need to host. I just sit and breathe and feel. Finally. Like, I'm not performing for a seat at the table. I belong. Right here. I tell stories now without trimming the edges. I don't rush. I don't explain. If I pause to sip tea or lose my place, she waits. She smiles. She wants the full story, not just the ending. I told her about the time her dad got stuck in a mud puddle up to his knees. I told her how Harold once brought me a single daisy and called it a flower with room to grow. She laughed the way I used to, and I realized I wasn't forgotten. I was just waiting for the right ears. My voice still holds weight, not because it's loud, because she listens. For a while, I truly believed I'd disappeared, that when the room grew quiet around me, I had faded too. But I hadn't. I was there in the way the quilts were stitched, in the rhythm of every pie crust, in the soft hum of hymns I still whispered while folding towels. They didn't see me, not because I wasn't there, but because they stopped looking. I've stopped mourning their blindness and started loving my own reflection again. Because I never left. I just stepped back until someone noticed the shape I'd left behind. Dignity isn't something someone gives you. It's something you keep, not out of pride, out of truth. It's in knowing who you are, even when others try to tell you otherwise. It's saying, I am still here, without raising your voice. It isn't in the inheritance. It isn't in the key. It's in what you don't surrender. I am not the sum of their decisions. I am the woman who planted flowers with her bare hands. Who taught babies to read. Who sat through storms and still made tea. That's dignity, and I've kept it.